All right, thanks for joining in today. Today we'll be talking about pivot tables. We'll get into creating a simple pivot table, and I'll show you how to play around with some of the fields within the pivot table. We'll get into some formatting tips, and then I will show you how to add additional calculated fields. As always, the data set is in the link below, so feel free to access it, and you can work alongside me or work on it in your own time. Okay, so without further ado, let's dive in. So starting with the data file, we will start on the data tab. So our data set that we're working with is basically showing us customer sales with the sales rep region, the product sold, and the sales amount, and plenty of other fields here. So the first step in creating your pivot table is you want to select your whole data set. So in this case, we want to select cell A1 all the way to cell I51. Now that we have that selected, we want to come up here to the home ribbon and we want to click on the insert tab. And then from the insert tab, the first option is this pivot table option. So let's just click right on the icon. You don't have to click the drop down, just right on the icon. The first option in this little gray pop-up box that'll come up is it's asking you to define the range, which we already have. We have the cell A1 to I51, so we're good on that. The second section of this pop-up is asking us where Excel wants us to put our pivot table. Now, a new sheet will generate a new tab and put the pivot table there. Otherwise, you can use this existing worksheet. Since I already have a tab labeled pivot table, I want to put it here. So I'm going to click on the existing worksheet, and then I'm going to click in my tab, and I'm going to select any cell in this tab. Here, select cell A2. And I'm telling Excel this is where I want my pivot table to go. I'll click OK. And then it'll create this shell pivot table that we can start building. Now, as you've noticed off to the right, this pivot table field box pops up. So this is kind of where we will start to build our pivot table. Now, just a heads up, if you click off of this pivot table function, it disappears on the right. So let's click back into it to make it reappear. Okay, so let's start building. So as you can see down here, we have 4 boxes, and then we have all of our fields up here. Each of these 4 boxes, you're defining the segment of the pivot table. So let's go through, let's add one field to each of these, and I can show you how they work. Okay, so for the first box, filter. So I want to see my data filtered by region. So I'm going to drop the region field down here. And once we get this built out, I'll show you how to actually filter by specific regions within your pivot table. Okay, now the rows box. So this, any field we drop in there, it will generate down the side of our pivot table. So down the rows of our pivot table. So basically, for this, I want to see company name. As you can see, it generated all the company names down the rows. Now, over to the columns box, as you would expect, if we drop any field in here, it will show us along the columns what those fields are. So for the columns, let's do year purchased. As you can see, it generated the years purchased here. Now finally, we have this value field. So in this value field, I'm going to select total sales amount, and this will show us the sales by company by year. Now revisiting the filter section, I'm going to drop down the filter and say I only want to see this table by the north region. So I'll filter to north, and you can see this only generates the north region. You can select multiple filters here by dropping down into the filter and then doing select multiple. So say I want to see north and west. So now it aggregates or sums the north and west all into one pivot table. Now say I want to see all of the regions, and I don't want them to be all summed up into one pivot table. I want them to be all separated out, but I still want to see the company name. Now you can go over to your pivot table fields off to the left and drag the regions from filters into rows. And now you can see that they are sectioned out now by the region. Okay, so that is just one example. Obviously, you have to build your pivot table based off of the data you want to see. So maybe you don't want to see it by year. Maybe you want to see it by region at the top. Maybe you want to see it by sales rep down the side, whatever that may be. Now, another way that you can do a pivot table without looking at like a dollar amount. So I'm going to remove from the values the total sales amount. Say we want to see products purchased, we want them to count it. So we'll drag products purchased here. So because products purchased is not a numeric value, it will count every time a product is purchased and then sum it. So as you can see, Foodies Hub in the East region sold 2 products in 2022, or bought 2 products in 2022. So that's just another way to play around with that field value. All right, now that we talked about that, let's get into some formatting. So I'm going to go back to the data tab. I'm going to create a whole nother pivot table. So insert pivot table. I'm going to go to this existing worksheet and I'm going to paste it, or tell it to paste it into this formatting tab. Okay. So I'm going to drop down and see sales rep. I'm going to see by region. Oops. So region, sales rep. And then I want to see amount sold. But not only that, I want to see their company name. Okay, there looks like a lot is going on here. So we can see this is by the region, sales rep, then company. Say I want to format this a little bit differently so it's easier to digest. Up at the top here, you can see this design in green. So we're going to click on the design, and then you can see these layout sections. So in order to make this easier to digest, you can click into report layout and then go to show in tabular form. Okay, that's making it a little bit easier. We still got work to do. So then we'll go back into report layout and then we'll go repeat all labels. Okay, we're getting there. And then once more, we're going to go into subtotals and we're going to say do not show subtotals. All right, that is so much better. Okay, so as you can see, this makes it more digestible. If we are trying to look and we want to see all the regions and sales reps and company names all on one line per sales amount. Okay, this is just one of many, many, many ways you can format a pivot table, but I do use this often in my daily work. So I thought this would be an awesome tip to show everybody here. All right, lastly, let's go to the calculated fields tab. So we're going to go back to the data tab. We are going to select our data set again and insert, create a pivot table. This time we're going to choose the calculated fields. We'll say okay. All right. So now I'm going to see sales rep and I want to see sales amount and I want to see quantity purchased. Okay. So we can see this is what the sales rep is selling and this is the sales amount that they're selling, or the quantity that they're selling. Okay. Now I want to see what is the rate of each product that they're selling. So obviously there is no rate on here, but we do know the math to get to the rate would be the sales amount divided by the quantity purchased. So we do have those 2 fields. So in order to get to the rate, we'll have to create a field that's not in the data set that divides the amount of sales, the sales amount, by the quantity purchased. So up in your toolbar under pivot table analysis or analyze, you'll go to the field items and sets and then drop down to calculated fields. Okay. Then this little gray box pops up. Now we'll name this field rate. And then in the formula, this is where we will put the formula. So we'll do equals and we'll do sales amount divided by quantity purchased. We'll say, okay. And here it is. Here is our rate. We can format that to dollars and we can see the rate in which our sales reps are selling the products at. All right, and that concludes pivot tables. There's much, much more to be shared about this. So I will have many, many lessons in relations to pivot tables as well. So if you liked this content and you found it useful, please follow and subscribe, and I'll see you next time.